what do you mean by fractal? Yeah, so a fractal is something that exists outside of World of Warcraft. That is, at its base form, I think, a mathematical explanation for kind of an inherent connectivity between everything in the universe. Okay, and that sounds like really expansive and general and woke. So just like give me a second to explain what I mean by that. It's actually quite simple. Everything is connected through observation, inspiration, replication, execution. And what I mean by this is that when you see certain stories told in a video game or in a movie, those stories are almost never original. They're inspired by something else. They're connected to it through something that you might not even see is connected. And this concept of this connection exists even in things like language. So if someone were to say like the word like water and ask a bunch of people what their first initial thought response to that word would be, there is kind of a pattern to what people would say. So Alec always chimes in here in the chat when people ask this. A fractal is a pattern of infinite complexity that contains itself. Real-life fractals are relatively simple, mathematical formulas that produce complex patterns that repeat as you zoom in on one part. And so conceptually, you can take the idea of fractals as a mathematical concept, and you can apply it to connections between characters, events, places, things like that. So, for instance, an example of a fractal in World of Warcraft is how you have the Titan Pantheon. The Titan actually seems to operate often in fractals. They seem to have a repeating pattern. And so by that I mean you have the Titans, who are this council with a leader and a queen. Then you have the Titan Keepers, who have this council, who have a leader. And he has similarities to one of the characters who's in the other council of Titans. And they all have these similarities and things that connect them together. Right? So you can draw certain things, you can learn certain things, I think, when you're able to recognize and identify repeating story cycles, events, ambitions, behaviors. So it's very difficult for me to look at Sargeras and Deathwing and Ferak, right? And not see similarities between those characters and their situations. In every case, it's the black metal fire guy who gets pissed off a little too easily and who generally seems to be pretty fucking smart, getting corrupted, allegedly, by a darker force, whether it be something internal emotion, the old gods, or, madness in general, isolating himself from the other members of his family and or council, and usually bringing about more harm than good as a result of his actions. So that is an example of like a repeating story fractal in World of Warcraft. However, Sargeras and those characters can also have tremendous similarities to characters from other mythos, religions, and real-life inspirations, which all basically comes together to illustrate the nature of fractals and that everything is essentially inherently linked together, and there are patterns drawn in human behavior, in language, in architecture, in color, in behavior, which I think I said, even among gods. And from those, like I said, patterns, you can recognize and draw what some would probably consider to be anecdotal or circumstantial evidence, but I think that there's a lot. I think that shit is important. I mean, it's still fucking evidence. It might not be direct proof, it might not be a text that is saying directly what's being said, but circumstantial and anecdotal evidence is still evidence. So, it's also Arthas, it's also Anduin, it's also the jailer, doing something wrong, allegedly, getting dominated, being forced against your will, maybe it turning you into a little bit of a darker boy for a little bit. You're not feeling so hot anymore. You're not feeling yourself as much. You're dark, you're brooding, you're angry. You start doing things that you might not normally do because you're being affected by something external. It's not even you really anymore. You're starting to feel this darkness stemming from another being. That's just so fucked up. Did he do Uldir already? I did. Another example of it, when Pyro was talking about fractals, He's talking about a combination of reoccurring themes and as above, so below in universe. Right. Things happening at a very grand scale, at the most cosmic scale, are probably in some capacity also happening at the level down, and the level down from that, and the level down from that, because history just tends to repeat itself. Another fractal is Anshe, Musha, and the Blue Child being compared to the Windrunner sisters and their brother Lirath. Correct. Their nicknames make the comparison pretty obvious in my opinion. Absolutely. Lady Sun, Lady Moon, Little Sun, Little Moon. Definitely. You're looking at Lady Moon, Elune. You're looking at, you know, I would assume he's not going to be Lady Sun, but Little Sun, I would assume maybe could be Sargeras. I think one of the big things I'm missing in this equation, frankly, is the fourth. The fourth one, which a lot of signs are pointing towards being Aeonar, being Lady Moon, or pardon me, Lady Sun, or Azeroth. It could be Azeroth. That's probably what it is, actually. It's probably not Aeonar, because I still like her being a usurper. She doesn't belong here. That bitch is sticking her nose in shit. Should not be doing this. That's what I think, anyway. I think she's secretly like the Queen of Rot, and probably like the greatest scourge upon the cosmos, but, you know, what do I know? Anyway, I think, yeah, that's a huge fractal. You would have Little Moon as Blue Child, Lady Moon as Elune, probably Little Sun as Sargeras, and Lady Sun as probably Azeroth. I mean, you guys have seen, we've seen Azeroth. I mean, you saw what she looked like, right? I mean, you guys saw that shit, right? I mean, if that's not a sun. And Anshe was pretty good at making weapons, apparently. He crafted them. Even in his younger years, he and Musha both made weapons. Dual blades for Anshe, which is interesting because we have a fractal for Sargeras, who's Anduin Rin, who carries a sword called Charlemagne, which is an ancient elven sort of known origin that seems to reflect the soul of its wielder, or even hold within it fragments of the past souls of its wielders, and can split the sword, and Anduin can split the sword in two. So the idea that, you know, or maybe this is only one of two blades. There is a whole fucking myth in World of Warcraft lore about Gorshalak. I just spelled that wrong, but I'm going to read you this. This is from the RPG. Gorshalak of the Dark Render is the most powerful weapon in the universe. This massive greatsword was originally wielded by Sargeras, while he was the champion of the Titan Pantheon. When Sargeras fell to his madness, Gorshalak, being semi-sentient, sundered itself into two shatterbound pieces to prevent the fallen Titan from wielding it. One fragment was claimed by Sargeras and reformed into Gorabal, while the other was claimed by Agramar and forged into Tayshalak. If both fragments are ever possessed by a non-evil being, they can be combined to reform Gorshalak, the most powerful weapon in the universe. In canon, the Sword of Sargeras is never given a name. The non-canonical RPG's origins are also contradicted, as in canon, Sargeras and Agramar's weapons were always different, and unnamed, separate blades. Then both swords shattered in a duel when Sargeras betrayed the Pantheon. There is a trinket in the game, however, called Gorshalak's Legacy. And then we got the swords in the game, of course, from the adventurer, or treasure fucking trader's post. Goradar, Dark Blade of the Sunderer. So there seems to be some allusions to... There's also Tayshalak in World of Warcraft. So, most powerful weapon in the universe being sentient. What are the chances it's powered by world souls?